from college. I think that's a tremendous achievement. And since education does lead to a better life, I really hope that you enjoy the rewards of this education for which you've worked so hard, and that you're an inspiration to your children and to other people around you. I'm sure you are. Today, I want to focus on one personal characteristic which I hope that you have acquired while at Lakeland and that you'll magnify further as your life unfolds. That characteristic is revealed in one of the best-loved children's books, which begins, "This is George. He lived in Africa. He was a good little monkey and always very curious." And so begins the story of Curious George, who happens to be with me here today. If you don't know the story, in 1940, Curious George was created from the creative imaginations of a husband and wife, Margaret and H.A. Ray. Their first 7 books sold more than 30 million copies. In these stories, George examines and imitates everything he sees around him. Since he's from the jungles of Africa, almost everything is new. He sees a hat in the first book and puts it on his head, and so begins his adventure. He sees a telephone and accidentally dials the fire department. He sees house painters and decides he's going to paint, and on and on and on. His misadventures are ignited by impulse and inquiry as he wants to do and try everything around him. And the story's charm, is that they don't condemn, but rather relish this curiosity. All of us can approach life with such curiosity. Why? Well, our lives become richer and more meaningful. Curiosity helps us embrace change, not fear it. Curiosity is the driving force which expands our mind. It's an eagerness to learn. And my own definition is that curiosity is what can happen when confidence meets the unknown. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. There are 3 aspects of life where curiosity is vitally important to a richer, more meaningful, expansive life, and I think these are professional, personal, and interpersonal. My profession is venture capital. I spend my day in Silicon Valley meeting with bright, eager entrepreneurs who have ideas for products and services to change the world. You know the names of many of the companies that have come from there. Intel is the granddaddy of all. Apple, Cisco, on the West Coast, Microsoft, Amazon, eBay, more recently Google and Yahoo, Facebook and Twitter. Entrepreneurs have also invented medical devices which have saved countless lives. Avastin for treating cancer, TPA for heart attacks, implantable defibrillators were invented by small companies on the West Coast for treating cardiac arrhythmias, and stents to open clogged arteries. Now, it's worth saying this entrepreneurial spirit isn't restricted to Silicon Valley. In fact, it's found worldwide, but within 30 miles of right here, there are companies that have been formed that have national, if not international, leadership positions, and you know the names of those. Kohler, Johnsonville Sausage, Sargento Cheese, Allen Edmond Shoes, Orion Lighting, and American Orthodontics. As a venture capitalist who identifies and coaches entrepreneurs, I use curiosity every day in my work. How does a product work? Is there a market? And if so, how do you reach it? Where should the product be designed and manufactured, and what cost? And what motivates the founder? The secret to great venture capital investing is to find out if a founder is a great leader. Can he clearly communicate? Can he recruit great people and build a team? Is she intellectually honest? Does she understand risk and reward? Is she competitive? Does she want to win? I also look for curiosity in the entrepreneurs that we back. Why? Well, I want to tell you two stories today about two people that illustrate this. The first is the story of one of my favorite entrepreneurs, who's a very curious George type fellow. Randy Lips was in the hospital, worried about his newborn daughter whose lungs weren't working properly. This was his fifth child, and by the way, he now has 10 children, all with the same wife. The child's condition was serious enough that he moved into the hospital for several weeks. Randy had been with American Airlines and had been an efficiency and scheduling expert after he graduated from college. As the hours and days wore on, Randy noticed two things about the nursing staff who were attending to his daughter. The first thing he noticed was that each nurse had her own stash of medical supplies tucked away in a drawer or a closet. If she used something from her stash, well, it was available immediately. But if she had to retrieve a catheter or a needle of some sort from outside, she was gone an uncomfortably long period of time. The second thing that Randy noticed were the sticky tags which nurses put on their uniforms. These came off the medical supplies and were eventually transferred to the patient's chart for billing purposes. As a curious person, Randy began to speculate that there must be a better way to work efficiently with medical supplies in the hospital. After his daughter was released, Randy began work on a supply cabinet, which had the necessary security, which had little lights that guided nurses to the bins where supplies or eventually drugs were kept, and which automated billing and inventory control. All these product characteristics allowed the nurse to better care for her patients while improving efficiency and accuracy. Today, 19 years later, Randy's daughter is a freshman in college, and the company he founded, Omnicell, employs 800 people, sells $250 million worth of these automated cabinets into hospitals, and is present in 1,300 hospitals in the United States. So Omnicell cabinets feed drugs and supplies to 250,000 patient beds, or about 1/4 of the million beds that are available in hospitals in this country. No doubt, Randy's curiosity created this growing, profitable company. I want to tell you that second story about another friend of mine. Curiosity, you see, can be very important, too, to the social entrepreneur who works in the nonprofit world. Gary Haugen is a friend of mine who was a lawyer working for the Justice Department when he was loaned to the United Nations in 1994 to investigate the Rwandan genocide. Deeply troubled at seeing the massacre firsthand, where 800,000 people were slaughtered in 100 days in Rwanda, Gary asked himself and others how this could happen. 3 years later, Gary founded the International Justice Mission, which rescues victims of violent oppression. Today, 300 lawyers, law enforcement, and aftercare professionals operate in 14 field offices overseas. When I asked Gary what role curiosity played in founding and running the International Justice Mission, here's what he said, and I quote, "I do think a very healthy, almost insatiable curiosity had a lot to do with the development and growth of IJM. I spent hour after hour listening to victims of abuse tell their stories. My colleagues and I have a very powerful curiosity about the lives of real people, especially hurting people. What happened to you? How did it happen? Who did it? Why? How could they possibly do that? At the end, it is the power of curiosity that drives us to find answers and solutions, especially when they are very hard to find," unquote. Because of the curiosity of Gary, each year IJM rescues hundreds of victims, widows and orphans in Africa who have lost their livelihood or their property children in Southeast Asia who've been forced into prostitution, and families in India who have been bonded into slavery because of their inability to pay seemingly trivial debts back. So why is curiosity important for an entrepreneur? Two reasons. First of all,